So like the Gospels, like any Gospels, we're only getting a face value as to exactly what the Christians were trying to do. There's a lot of questions that are still out there. But as such, there are a lot of questions as it relates to hip-hop culture as to what it is exactly that it's doing, aside from what I'm hearing from Lil Wayne, aside from what I'm seeing in the parties, etc. But for me, I think it's a little bit more deeper because the more I speak to young people all over the world and seeing how hip-hop has provided them with skills, tools, an opportunity to sort of have this discourse and dialogue about each other's faiths, right? When I think about artists like Hassan Salam, who's Muslim and does a lot of grassroots hip-hop. He just came back from a tour from with Immortal Technique, and part of their campaign has been the police riot that happened recently in England by the gentleman that was killed by the England police. I'm trying to forget his name. But essentially, we have a gospel, we have a social historical narrative, we have a covenant. But what exactly it is, how do we know we are planting fruits in this tree, right, that we're planting? And I think one way to measure that is not only by looking at the covenants, right, that hip-hop has created and established, but also look at its fruit that it's bearing, right? So someone like a Hassan Salam or Rebel Diaz, who owns the Rebel Diaz Arts Collective in the Bronx. They provide studio time for young people. They are right now in Ferguson, covering the incident that happened with Michael Brown. Talib Kweli is currently right now. So we see hip hop in the political realm. He just got interviewed by NPR along with Rosa Clemente, who, by the way, became the first hip hop person to run for presidential office under the Green Party. When I was wrapping up my studies, and I'm going to wrap this up because I can talk too much. I talk too much. I'm sorry. It's like I'm like my mom. I can go on forever. When I was wrapping up my research, it was not ironic that hip-hop was turning 40 years old. You know, when this all happened, we're talking about 1973, right? The establishment of the Zulu Nation, the creation of the Elements, the community gatherings and assembly of the people in parks and community centers, an exchange of dialogues and understandings of all walks of life coming together to learn and build on each other in a society that was essentially marginalizing and segregating them, right? Any opportunity to disconnect communities of empowerment, that was the goal. But hip-hop always continued to penetrate itself in all aspects. My former advisor said it best. He says we're living in a hip-hop renaissance. I'm working with an organization right now called Windows of Hip Hop, and it's working on to create the first ever hip-hop campus in the birthplace of hip-hop in the Bronx. We have hip-hop psychology conferences. I attended the first one at Fordham University. We have the Hip-Hop Education Center at New York University that was founded by a pioneer of a woman, and you guys can look all of this up, by Martha Diaz. We have hip-hop ambassadors such as Tony Blackman, who's traveled to 32 countries all over the world doing something called the Womanist Cipher, right? We have the first ever hip-hop diplomat put in a congressional, a district office in Brooklyn. His name is Honorable George Martinez, right? So Renaissance in the sense that 40 years now, hip-hop is now in a state of maturity. And I've sat in tables and conversations with so many people from all aspects of life about where's hip-hop headed now. And you know, the number 40 has biblical, spiritual, and theological connotation behind it, right? The number 40. 40 has always been a number of completion, a beginning and a completion, right? When we think about 40 days Jesus was tempted, right? Before he started his ministry. 40 years, the ancient Israelites were wandering the wilderness before they made it to their promised land. I think now that hip hop is 40, we made it to our promised land. Thank you.